Welcome to Writing the Wrong Way, a podcast for readers who want something strange and exciting, and writers who need something new. If you want to support this podcast, please consider buying my new book, The National Gallery. I'm extremely proud of this book because it may be my best book, and it is certainly my most personal and heartfelt book. But just because I say it's heartfelt doesn't mean it isn't full of weirdness, like sonnets about Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and elegies for my dead iPhone. For a limited time, if you buy a copy of the National Gallery directly from me, I will sign it, and I will also send you a signed copy of my previous book, The Politics of Knives, for no additional cost. So you can order the book and get your free book with it at thenationalgallery.ca. That's thenationalgallery.ca. I'm also excited because it is my 10-year anniversary as an author. My first book, Ex Machina, was published in October 2009, and to celebrate, now that it is 2019, as I record this, I've made Ex Machina available as an ebook for the first time. It was never available as an ebook previously, and I'm giving that ebook away for free at jonathanball.com/freebook. So go to jonathanball.com/freebook, and you can sign up, get all my exciting news when it's exciting and new, and other free resources that I'll just send you as I create them, plus a free book. And again, you can go to thenationalgallery.ca if you want to find out more about my new book and get a free book as well when you order that. So two free books and a paid book available to you. In any case, let's get into the show. Before we begin, just a quick note that the podcast is going on a holiday hiatus. So this will be the last podcast of 2019, but I'll be back in 2020 with some really great guests, some really interesting, strange, and new topics, and a complete overhaul of a lot of the things that I'm doing and some exciting announcements. So if you're not already following me on my newsletter, which has been a little inactive but is going to be very active again soon, go to jonathanball.com and sign up to my newsletter. All you have to do is when their form pops up to ask for your email, you put your email in. For doing that, as a thank you, I'll send you a copy of my first book free, Ex Machina, for free. If you go to writingthewrongway.com, you can also do the same thing, but instead get a ebook on how to construct a writing schedule that's going to work for you, something that we're going to talk about a little bit in this episode. But we'll be back in 2020 again with some exciting new content and lots of cool stuff happening in 2020. I've been really kind of grinding behind the scenes on a lot of projects that unless you're on my Patreon, you won't necessarily be aware of. But are going to sort of start to come to fruition in 2020. So 2020 is going to be a big and exciting year here at Martian Embassy Media, which is me and this mug. I got a mug with the logo on it. That's the company headquarters. This mug, wherever I put this mug down, is my company headquarters. And I'm the company. So, it's small scale, but there's some big stuff coming down the pipe. Now, the other thing I just want to quickly note is that if you go to patreon.com/JonathanBall. So patreon.com/JonathanBall. You can support this podcast and a lot of the other, interesting stuff that is going to be coming down the pipe. But regardless, keep in touch with subscribing to this podcast. Maybe sign up for the newsletter if you're not already signed up for it. That's where you're going to, kind of get the, real inside scoop is on the Patreon, the newsletter. But regardless of all of that, there's lots of fun, exciting podcast stuff coming. I'm really excited for 2020 and all the cool things that I've been talking to different people about, in these kind of secret behind the scenes meetings. But I will announce more of that stuff next year. So have a happy holidays, have a happy new year. Go back and check out some of the older episodes if you haven't already. This is closing in on episode 60, so there's lots of stuff that's just been coming out, and you may want to catch up on if you're new to the podcast. Do me a favor and recommend this podcast to people, and just keep being you and keep righting the wrong. So this is part 2 of my interview with Nathan Dueck. If you go back to last week's podcast, you can listen to part 1 if you missed it. WritingTheWrongWay.com again has that episode, and this one. This is part 2. Go back and listen to part 1 if you haven't already. Welcome, Nathan Dueck. Another important thing that I do that I would recommend if people can manage it, and they can't always do it, but like one thing I started doing is like I realized there were certain things where I needed like longer blocks of time. Like I just wasn't getting the work that I needed to get done in a certain in the quantity I needed to get it done.
Sure.
The way that you're describing, so I was doing what you were doing, and it was working fine, except it was just too slow. And like. Yep. Again, keep in mind that I'm looking in a situation where because I was staying home with the kids a certain amount of the time, or if I didn't stay home with them, I was going to have to find like paid arrangements and stuff. It kind of was getting to the point where it was not worth it to take work. Mm-hmm. So like if I had to leave the house to take the job, I was losing money.
Yeah.
But then if I was at home, I still had to make money. I couldn't, but I also didn't want to be like, type on the computer while my kid was like in the other room, you know what I mean? Like that wasn't going to work either. So
true.
I had to like figure out ways to make things work. And one of the sort of ways that I managed to, but one thing was like, as you were talking about, like, when, me and my wife were both home, say, there were like maybe blocks of time she could take the kids and then I could maybe go work. Well, what I found was the problem then was I'm still in the house. And so even though I'm working, in their minds, I'm not necessarily working. Like it's very easy for them to interrupt me. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you.
And so I was getting very upset at them interrupting me during like these times where I'd prearranged that I would have the time to work. But at the same time, I was aware that it was somewhat unreasonable for me to expect to be in the house and not interrupted. They're in the house. Of course, they're going to interrupt me. Like, I can't, and even if they weren't trying to, like, the noise would interrupt me, say, or in some ways, like, it's not unreasonable for them. It was unreasonable for me to pretend that they could pretend I wasn't there. Mm-hmm. So what I started doing was just leaving the house, like, if a certain amount of times. Like right now, it's a Monday, like. Normally, my wife has Mondays off work, and so what I kind of started to arrange with her is like I'm just going to leave the house all day Monday. So like I left the house at like 8 a.m, and I won't go back till like 10 at night. And just that whole time I'm in a studio downtown. I like rent this studio out part time just so I could leave the house and like sit here and work all day.
Sure. And
if I've got a meeting, I'll arrange it on this Monday because otherwise I just don't have the ability to meet with people. And it's a bit of it's a necessity for me insofar as like being productive and getting work done. And then like, other times, so in some evenings I'll come here as well. Mm-hmm. And other times like I won't. And I'll just be home doing, dad stuff or whatever. But I found like, I kind of go to an extreme with it. It's like if I'm going to be out of the house for 2 hours, I might as well be out of the house for 14 hours. Sure. On some days, and other days it's like, 2 hours is fine. But like I just try to like really kind of as much as possible plan the time in advance. Like I try to plan a whole week of time in advance as if I can, and then I try to like stick to that schedule as much as possible, which you never can really do.
Sure.
But I try to do it, and then as well I try to like really have as much as possible these kind of hard boundaries between when I'm working and not working. So like if I'm here, I try to just be here and working. And if I'm not here, I try to forget about work. And so like it's as close as I come to having an office, although I'm not
How long is the commute from your house to the studio?
It's Winnipeg, right? So it's like half an hour. Everything's half an hour, right?
Yeah.
So like again, like this is really like these other guys. There's like these comic artists and and writers and illustrators, like they're guys who kind of make their money primarily as illustrators, but they also like, the one guy is also a writer. He's got like 2-3 books coming out next year, but they're like full-time artists, these guys, and they just have this studio. But I'm, friends with them, and I just kind of like have, finagled my way in here like 1 or 2 nights a week kind of thing. And I literally just pay them like a rent to like come in here now and again. It's great, because even though it costs me a bit of money, like I get way more done when I'm here because I can focus.
Yep.
And then I'll also, like I say, do things in blocks. Like I'll come in here and I'll I can sit here and work and mark papers for 4 hours straight, or work on like my novel for like 3 hours straight, and that 3 hours straight is worth. It's the same as like 5 hours broken up. You know what I mean? Sure. So if you can only get the 5 hours broken up, then I think that's what you should do. But like if you can manage to like block it at all, it helps quite a lot. But I mean, it depends, right? It depends on, like, I wasn't able to do this a while ago. I was much more fractured. So now I've got a little bit more like the ability to have blocks. Like tomorrow morning, both my kids will be at school for like a 3-hour period. So I'll be like, able to do something in that 3-hour period normally. Like, but then like I rarely get that. Like I get a little bit more than I used to, and like as time goes on, I'll maybe get a bit more of that kind of ability to be a little less fractured. But it's hard, as you well know, like it's just a fractured, you just have to get used to being able to work in a fractured way.
People keep telling me that when the children are both in school, I'll have more time. And I don't understand how that's going to happen. I like to believe it's true, but I don't see that as being actual fact.
I don't know, man. As they get older, though, one thing you can do is incorporate them into your writing life in a more, interesting way. Like, I was very lucky that my daughter was interested in writing. Like, me and her are very similar, and we have a lot of shared interests. And so, with the National Gallery, there's a lot of poems in that book that are literally straight up mention Jessie and talk about her because
it's actually very endearing.
Well, when I was writing, a lot of it she was, kind of in like. She was right in the midst of like the teen years. So like she's turning 20 now, but like when I was writing a lot of that book, she was around like 15, 16, 15, 16, 17 was kind of the period when I was mainly working on the book. And so especially like around 16, 17, like there was a lot of kind of drama going on in all of our lives, which I won't get into, but she's also just going through normal like teen life, teen drama stuff. So at that age in particular, there's sort of a thing that the kids do, which, me and her always got along very well, and we're, very, like we just kind of are in sync in a lot of ways, personality wise. And, we have a good relationship, but, you still have like, in that age period, particularly, there's that whole issue of like, the kid wants to kind of spend time with you, but they don't want to spend time with you. And they're also like going through their own things, and they don't necessarily want to tell their dad everything. You know what I mean? Especially, and then, she having a daughter, and she's just a whole other dynamic to it as well. Like, but one thing I found what was helpful with the writing is like I started using the book as a way where like I would arrange for her and me to get together where I would like, she was going to help me on the book with the book. And so I would like get her to like read things and like give me like reactions or feedback or make like notes. Like she got really into like giving me feedback and editing responses. And initially I just did it because it was kind of like a period where I just needed a way that we could hang out, and it wasn't like she didn't have to talk to me. You know what I mean? But like she could, where she could like comfortably like be with me and not necessarily be talking to me if she didn't feel like talking to me, but still like feel like, we just like could like sit beside each other and like, like it was just like a nice thing where we could kind of be together, but also she didn't have to really participate in being there if she didn't want to or wasn't in the mood or just had her own, you know what I mean? Like,
that's just some father-daughter time. You sit down on the couch, you hand her your manuscript, and then you turn on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You know, traditional
not quite,
techniques.
but very much like that way of like, it's a way to participate in like doing things together, but it's a very low pressure, you know, and like, and she got really into it, you know, in a way I didn't quite expect, and she was, you know, and so like, anyway, the point though is, one things you can do as they get older is you can kind of more fully like engage with them around creative writing. Like, especially in this case, she wanted to learn things about creative writing. She had questions about like writing. She was taking like creative writing in her own, like high school. She was doing like some creative writing in her classes and stuff. And so it was just like, on one hand, a way to teach her some stuff that she wanted to learn, but also on the other hand, like just a way to get her like, you know, just something she could do with me that wasn't necessarily like high emotions.
You know, I regret I had the opportunity to say hi to her when I was in Winnipeg.
Oh, yeah.
And I regret not taking that chance just because I thought, what kind of young woman would be interested in saying hi to a creepy old man? But now I should have just said hi. So by lieu of saying that, hi, Jesse, I hope things are going well for you.
Well, she was very busy at the restaurant that day, but like,
is she going to? You don't have to answer this question. It's kind of personal, but is she going to school now? Is she?
Yeah, she's in University of Manitoba right now, and so.
Oh, really?
She just last year she did Stuart Sinclair's creative writing class, and she actually they gave her like a creative writing scholarship award, and she's very proud of that. And right now she's just doing like her psych classes though. But yeah, she's in university. Every once in a while she's on this podcast, but she hasn't been for a little while. But
so she hasn't learned the lessons of her old man, and she's decided she's going to.
She's very conflicted about the writing. She's you know she's very interested in it, and she's got like the journal. Well, it's a nice kind of weird circularity in some ways, like because I started a little weird zine when we were at the University of Manitoba there.
I remember it. I still have copies.
Well, that morphed and name changed, and over the years it morphed and became what's called now the Arts Tribune, which is the literary journal that kind of comes out of there. And it sounds like she's going to have a poem now in the Arts, you know, the new version of that, the much more professional, you know, literary journal version of what I had started back in the day. So she's kind of on one hand, like, I don't know, she's very interested in writing and is very good at it. She has a lot more talent than I ever had, but at the same time, you know, she's very leery of it.
I think that's a healthy leer. Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting you mentioned that, because just flashing back to our time. So in case the audience is trying to follow along, I can't imagine how you're interested in this discussion right now, but we have gone, so Jonathan and I have gone back to 1998 as we established previously. And I recall when you were writing for the Manitoban that you were interested in publishing some of my earliest poems in the Manitoban, which is so kind of you. And
I don't remember.
Yeah, I actually I have a copy of it in my very pathetic archives that are just begging to burn. But I have a copy downstairs. And one of the things you promised me as a youngster was that one day you're going to introduce me to Marcel Zama, who at that point was publishing. Yeah, did you meet Marcel?
I did.
Doggone it.
Now, I don't know
wanted
Marcel
so
well.
desperately to meet that guy.
You know, here's the funny thing about it, Marcel. So, I mean, I knew a bunch of guys who knew him well, but I didn't know him super well. But one time I was like, went to a movie and I was hanging out talking to, you know, this dude after this movie. I was like talking to some friend and like another friend, and there was like this guy there, and I was like talking to him for 20, 30 minutes before I realized it was Marcel Zama. He was talking about some magazine. He's like, yeah, you know, I did this photo shoot with this magazine, and they were doing this. I'm like, photo shoot for magazine? I'm like, what the fuck do you do? Anyway, at one point I'm like, wait a second. I go, are you Marcel Zama? He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh. I'm like, I didn't have a clue. I was talking to him for like 20 minutes and I didn't know.
I'm still mildly obsessed with him and have a couple of his original works because I'm an art collector and fancy.
You have original works by him?
Yeah, I do. I got them in Winnipeg back in the day when we were both students, and I decided to forego food for a little while so I could buy some of this stuff.
Wow. If I was smart, that's what I would have done.
It's kind of impressive. Like, I walk by this stuff in my home here and I'm thinking, wow, like, this stuff still holds up. This is excellent work. I'm proud that I own it. Anyway, then.
But yeah, I don't really know him. I just met him a couple times.
then for the listeners who are following along, we both went to the University of Calgary to pursue more education because you just can never get enough. and this is like during the period I alluded to earlier where I wasn't writing, and I ran across you and I just crossed paths momentarily at a Safeway in Signal Hill, I think, and you asked me what I was writing, and I was too ashamed to say that I wasn't writing. And the very fact that you were interested in what I was writing, and I took it as such encouragement. So I went home that day and of course had a cry. But then I started working on something that eventually became the next book I published. It was almost the same time as you just simply asking what I was working on. So indirectly, I really owe you a huge debt of gratitude for that. Not the Tarantino thing from before, because we were two young jerk-offs, but simply inquiring, just being a nice person and asking about writing helped nudge me along the path to return to writing. So you didn't do me any favors. I never got a chance to shake Marcel Zama's hand, but I did get to go home and start writing poems again. So thanks, Jonathan.
Oh, well, you're welcome. And one of the things that you had done, although you probably discounted, is like Nathan was one of the out of my cohort, one of the first people who, very quickly, it seemed to the rest of us, published a book. And quite a good
I would
book
not
as
say
well.
that.
But at Kingsmere, I remember I felt very far behind you because when did that book come out again?
That book came out when I was 24, so it would have been 2004.
So 2004, your first book comes out. Mine first book came out in 2009. So I, 5 years later, and I felt very, behind the Nathan times.
I'll tell you though, like in terms of first book publication, your first books, which were both published like almost simultaneously, are miles ahead of the nonsense that I published as a very desperately alone 23-year-old. So, I'm sorry to hear you felt behind, but you were way, way further ahead than you actually thought you were.
Well, regardless of taste and who thinks what book's better, the point is that your book was a real kind of inspiration for me in that sense. Like on one hand, I felt a kind of healthy competitiveness with your book. Sure. But on the other hand, I just thought it was a really good book and I really liked it a lot. And I thought, I don't know, I felt like it was doing certain things that, guys like Cooley and Croach were doing at the time, but then kind of amping it up into a kind of a new, interesting direction. And I thought, I kind of wanted to do that same idea. Like I feel like my first book is in many ways kind of in that wheelhouse of where your book is. I think like on the surface they don't look the same at all, and I think people would be hard pressed to see a connection between the two. But I feel they're kind of very much coming out of the same ground in or the same soil.
Oh,
and
I
was very much thinking about your book and kind of trying to think of like can I do like a long poem and that sort of thing, and like I was very influenced by that book at the time in particular.
It's interesting because you don't have to convince me that we were working on the same page. It doesn't make. Of course, we were educated by the same people. We were reading the same literature while we were doing our undergraduates. But reading, you were talking about Ex Machina now, right? Yeah, reading Ex Machina, I felt that this was a step up from the long poem form that we were steeped in, and I thought that was just such a smart move to make it into a long kind of chain poem. Some of the chains didn't go anywhere. I thought that was also so clever. And so in that sense, like it's flattering for you to say that my silly 23-year-old book was good, but also I thought you really pushed it further.
It has the reason why I pushed it further though is, and I don't mean further in terms of it being better than your book, but I mean specifically, like I was looking at your book. It's better. But I was looking at I was doing stuff very similar to what you were doing at the time. I was actually writing a book called Apocrypha with a K, and it was very much like in the wheelhouse of what you were doing, but with even more of a biblical connection and more of like a kind of Cooley / meets Croach but a little bit more formal kind of approach. So it was very much, I was writing very much the kind of stuff that you were writing and doing very much the kind of thing that you were doing in Kingsmere with different subject matter. But then when you put out Kingsmere, I looked at it and I was like, fucking Nathan, I'm like, this is a good book and it's doing a lot of the things I want to do, but like now I can't do that. So I thought, well, I can't just come up with a book that's like this book. I need to like find some new place to go. And and in a weird, because I really did like your book, but I also felt like, we're coming out of the same soil in many respects. And so I don't want to just be like writing a book that's like a lesser version of Kingsmere. I need to like find a new way to push this stuff into a different direction. And so that's very much where so like Ex Machina was really a direct, it really directly came out of like trying to think through what you were doing and what Marvin Francis was doing and a couple other people, and like, how can I kind of move in a different direction, but have a lot of the same sort of, stuff, behind me in terms of like pushing, like standing on the shoulders of the same sort of giants in a way, but kind of like going in my own direction that wasn't like where you guys were kind of going, because I was kind of seeing, this is my peer group and this is my cohort and stuff. Although I think probably nobody looking at my book because of the time period difference and because of, I think it just doesn't seem as connected to that stuff because I was really specifically moving away from it. But it wasn't because I disliked it. It was because I thought you guys were kind of locking it down a little bit more fully than like I could. And I was really kind of trying to find my own voice in that mix.
It's interesting you mentioned this, and I just want to make since you brought up Marvin Francis, I want to mention that, of course, I want you to read my book. I want everybody who's listening to my voice right now to pick up a copy of a very special episode and cherish it near their heart. But more importantly, you should absolutely search out City Treaty by Marvin Francis. I happened to have been there when he published it, and I got to see some of the drafts before the final publication because I was also kind of messing around at the publishing house then, and it's astounding. It still speaks to me. I think that book was well ahead of its time, and the fact that I had Marvin Francis in my life, it means the world to me to this day. Marvin Francis took me out for lunch when he heard that I was publishing my first book at 23.
Oh, wow.
And he told me, Nathan, you have this way about you. And he said, what you have to do if you want to be a writer is you just have to tell yourself you belong there. And I said, Marvin, I certainly don't belong there. And he's like, well, no one has to know that. You just have to tell yourself. And I tell myself this all the time, the words that Marvin bestowed to me, that, you know what, just tell yourself you belong there and you're going to fit in. It's just a matter of time. And the real bummer about it all is that I didn't know how important those words were or how much our time mattered, because I didn't realize that Marvin's time on Earth was limited. Like, he was running out the clock at that period. So here it is. This is my full-throated endorsement. Pick up City Treaty by Marvin Francis. Read it. Hand it to a friend. Review it online. It's legit. And I think that it's something that we could all be enjoying right now.
I mean, this is ended in a kind of weird space, but like I really absolutely
take it this way.
Wholeheartedly endorse like City Treaty, and it really is like City Treaty and your book Kingsmere were two of the big books where like I really felt like, these guys have really done something here, and I've got to really figure out what I'm doing, because the stuff I'm working on is not. It's not up to snuff, and and Francis was, just as a weird set of side note, Francis is the only author I ever met who tried to talk me out of buying his book. I tried to buy his book from him, Marvin, I heard you got this book out, can I get a copy from him? He's like, no, you don't want to buy a copy. He's like, just go to the library. They have it at the library. And he actually tried to talk me out of buying his book, but I went and bought it, and gone to sign it for me and stuff anyway. And yeah, he was a great guy and really super talented. And that City Treaty is a really excellent and underappreciated book. And just kind of to jump back to the kind of
I
topic
didn't mean
for a
to
second.
derail you, but
but just jump back to the topic for a second. Like, you know, those relationships that you have in your life with other writers, you know, are really significant to your writing. Like the relationships, of course, with your children, I think, you know, there's significant relationships that, of course, one can write about. But there is, like, as they grow, especially, like, there's a way that you can kind of bring them into the fold of that a little bit. And, you know, if they're interested in writing, of course, it's easier, you know.
Yep.
But even if they're not, like, it's, you know, you can kind of like use the, find ways to kind of include them, you know, and make it less of a competition between like your life and your writing. I find like maybe my last sort of tip in terms of like trying to fit writing and family together is just to try to like find any place. Like sometimes you really just have to separate them. Like I'll literally like leave the house and go to a studio rather than, and pay to be there rather than, you know, or even go to a coffee shop. Like I wrote all of John Pace's Crime Wave in a coffee shop, rather than say staying at home where my kids can come up and just start talking to me. Sometimes you just have to separate it as much as and find like artificial ways to like, you know, leave, you know, and really disconnect the two. But other times it can be useful just think a bit more fully about how can you know, fold these two things in together. So like maybe, you know, if you're going to write about TV, you could watch TV with your kid and then go write a poem about it, you know, as a really simple example. Or, you know, if you get your daughter to edit your poems like I did. Jessie like overhauled that book. She made me change which poem was first. I originally had the it's time for Canadian poem first, and she made me, she's like, that's not a good poem for your first poem. Who wants to open a book and say, oh, it's time for Canadian poem? I'd close the book if it was time for a Canadian poem.
Don't hand her my book, okay?
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, so like she really like had really specific and useful feedback. But even if the kid doesn't, you know, it doesn't hurt to like try to include them in the thing if they're older. Your kid's a little young for that, but like, you know, I think that sometimes it just takes a little bit of extra like thinking through like, well, how can the, you know, writing and the family connect more? And other times you just want to impose a boundary.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that because we live in a small community here. We're about 4 hours to the west of Calgary. But I keep thinking to myself, whenever writers visit the home or we have a chance to go to events and such, my kids are going to have the most interesting uncles and aunts of all, because they're going to have the opportunity to meet writers and hopefully benefit from that experience, not just being intimidated by the fact that you have brilliant people in their lives, but also to understand that these are people who do writing, and writing means you sit down, and sometimes you're wearing pants and sometimes you're not wearing pants, but you're still sitting down and you're still doing the work. They won't have the romanticized like notions of geniuses perched under trees, remembering days of yore kind of things stuck in their heads. So in that sense, I'm justifying my obsession with writing by saying it's for the kids' benefit. It'll make them good people.
Well, I mean, I think it just is useful to think, even on a simple level, you know, if the kid's interested in that kind of thing, like, you know, it's exciting for them to meet a writer sometimes, you know, like, or just like, or for it to not be exciting, but they're just like a normal thing. Like, you know, Jessie growing up, like I remember it was interesting always to think like sometimes she'd meet people and it's like whatever, another writer, and other times she'd be like, oh my god, you know, and it's just like, you know, even if they are sort of find it like normal and they don't have like the genius, the romantic notions really like grip hard and take hold, like because you know, the culture just has those romantic notions.
Sure.
And I think it, like you, I believe it helps to kind of like try to break them a bit, because, you know, just for them to see writing as a thing they could do and which is possible for them, even if they don't want to do it. Just the idea that they could do it, or like there's craft involved. It's just a thing they could sit down and learn. I think it just makes for, you know, I don't know, there's like an empowerment to it that that I always, wish that I could have had when I was younger. Like, it was very mystical and mystifying for me, and because I didn't know any writers. I grew up in a really small town where there was nobody, Yeah, like, so it was just very alienating in different ways. And, like, that was before the internet, as we say. But it's a little different now. But I think it's, there's just ways, as you say, there's just ways that, I think so often we can fall in the trap of thinking the writing and the other things are at odds when sometimes they're not. Like, they just can be integrated in some way.
I want to ask a question. The conversation's winding down, but I want to ask a question about when you are in the studio and you're sitting down to do your work, and it is work. I mean, it's labor. Do you do the Jonathan Franzen thing and stick hot glue gun into the side of your computer so you can't access the internet, or do you write with the internet on?
I should, but I don't. Sometimes if I'm having a hard time focusing, though, I'll just turn the internet off. Yeah. It is a good idea. Franzen is right, and that's how people should write. But it's hard to do, and I just I'm not in the habit of doing it. And, like, if there's something I like, but he's right. Like, that's 100%. I hate to say it because I'm not a big Jonathan Franzen fan. That 100% is the way you should approach writing a draft. You should just, especially if you don't have, like, a lot of time, you should just call any distraction. If you have to look something up online, like I'll go to look up a word maybe, or like the spelling of something, or I'll go to check a fact. And of course, very quickly you get off track and you don't come back. Like, and they've done, it's science. They've done studies into it. Like, if you are multitasking, it's not possible for your brain to do it. And you just do task switching, and then, it's like getting interrupted. Like, if somebody interrupts you, if you're sitting in your cubicle, it takes person like, an average of like 15 to 30 minutes, somewhere in there, I forget what it is, to get back on the task. Like, so if you only got, and the fact is, like, if you only got an hour or whatever it is, like, you should just cull distractions as much as possible. So I will forget to do it, basically, is what it boils down to. But if I catch myself getting distracted, I'll turn the internet off if I catch myself looking things up. But sometimes I just don't catch myself. I'm just doing it.
It's interesting, too, because I talk a good game about being disciplined and rigorous, and then I leave the internet on while I write. And it's because I find that I can kind of use it to fish for really good words that I didn't think of originally. But that, of course, takes time. So then I'm going to be focusing on one word or turn of phrase or even a line, and I'm going to be using the internet like as a fishing device and trying to reel in something great. But then I'm risking actually doing anything at all. So I should be more. I can't imagine this is true. This applies in no other aspect of my life. But I should be more like Franzen in this way, and just be rigorous and decide that the internet's not helping me. I'm saying this now, but I'm immediately going to disregard what I just said a second later.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as good at it as I should be, but I find every time I convince myself, oh no, it's smart to go look up something online right now, I'm always wrong. And I should just write it down on a piece of paper and make it and I should just make a plan, like in an hour I'll go do these things and make a list and then do the list. But I find myself falling in the trap of thinking I'm more disciplined than I am.
It's interesting, too. I just want to ask another question. I don't know why this came up in my brain, but you were mentioning something about your schedule, and we were talking extensively about scheduling, and then I wrote down vacation. Have you taken a vacation? Do you believe in taking vacations?
It depends what you call a vacation. Like, I'll just take days off, if that makes sense. So, like, if I'm leaving town to go, like, visit family or something, I'll, like, just take, like, some of those days I'll just work while I'm traveling, and other times I'll just say, like, I'm taking the day off, and I just will try as much as possible to not do any work. But I'm not great at taking time off because but I've tried to get, like, better about it. Like, what I'm trying to really consciously do, because I was so used to, like, trying to fit it in here, fit it in there. What I realized is it started to really fragment my attention, and it started to make, I'm already, like, in my head too much, right? And I find that like if I can kind of write consistently, I get out of my head a little bit because I'm kind of externalizing a lot of the stuff that's in the head, and I can kind of have a clearer head, around my family and friends and stuff. But on the other hand, I got too much in that habit of like it's always in my brain on some level, and I'm trying to get better at like taking time right off. So like what I'll do is I'll like try to plan like a couple of days in advance, or like I'll try to take at least 1 or 2 days a week if possible, where I don't do any work at all. But it's hard because one, my schedule is so crazy and crammed. But two, it's just like I can be a little workaholic with it if I don't catch myself. Not that I'm like, but I can be very lazy as well. It's just that like I'm not great at turning it off. Better at turning it on. But I'm trying to like practice turning it off. So instead of like taking a vacation, I'll pre-plan like days when I don't do any work if possible. And every time I catch myself sliding into it, I'll try to stop myself.
It's interesting though.
I can't do long stretches because I can't afford to. Like I just can't afford to take the time off.
You're very productive though. Like the amount that you produce, even if you're taking 2 days off a week, I am in awe.
But I feel lazy. Does that make sense? Like, because to you I look productive, or to like somebody else I look productive, but to me I just have all these unfinished projects.
Yeah, that's also very true.
I think like neither is correct. Like, I'm more productive than some people. I'm less productive than other people. But like I think that for the amount of time I spend writing, I'm pretty productive because I try to, as much as possible, just have systems in place. It's like the number one like productivity sort of thing that has saved my life in terms of getting anything done with kids is like just having like systems, whether maybe the system is just like, you wake up in the morning at 6 and then you write till 7, like I was doing that for a while, and like, so it's like, that's not a complicated system, but it's a system, right? You do the same thing every time and you get the predictable result. And the more systems I have in place and the more I kind of like do fewer things in a day. This is why that Free to Focus book I really recommend, because his core thing is like, if you should just try to do less things. And it sounds counterintuitive, but if you just do less things, but you focus on figuring out which things you should do, and then you just try to not do everything as much as possible. Like, it's really, the more I kind of move into trying to do fewer things in a day, but spend a little bit more focused time on them, and then like just shut myself off as much as possible. It works better and better, but it's hard. I don't have, I'm not great at it, but I'm getting better at it.
The reason I'm asking about vacation also is that I hate vacations. They terrify me. What am I going to do? I sit on my hands. A sandy beach sounds like the worst place for me to be. But my wife, like Sharon, I keep sounding like Borat. Sharon is very good about saying things like, you're going to be better at what you do if you take some time off. And it takes me time off to take time off. Like I spend days of my vacation just moiling in my brain, and then I can finally relax. This is not healthy.
But then you have a great idea, right?
Yeah, I do, and then I want to use that right away.
Yeah.
But this is not healthy, especially considering that we have children, and going on vacation is meaningful family time, and that is traditionally in our middle class lifestyle what people do. This is the thing. I keep saying to myself, I don't want to go on vacation because of class war, but at the same time, there's actually a meaningful reason to do things like go on vacation. So I'm trying to wrap my head around how I'm going to do this properly.
This is the other great thing about the studio, honestly. Like when I come to the studio, like I joke about it because like it sounds stupid, but like I have this mug. I put like a logo on this mug, and I like have 2 of these mugs. So like, there's one at home, and I got one at the studio. And like I try to like just have external like things, basically like triggers for my behavior as much as possible. It's like I'm trying to like trick myself into being like like if I have this mug on the desk, then I'm at work. And so if I'm at home and I'm working, I'll just like get the mug out and I'll put it down and like I'll have some coffee in it or whatever. Like, well, I'm gonna work with the mug. And then when I'm done work, I'll go wash the mug. And it sounds stupid, but like things like that where it's like a transition ritual. So I'm like transitioning out of being at work and trying to like transition into like being a present father. Yeah. And so to do that, I'll like basically symbolize the transition to myself by like, I'll walk upstairs and I'll wash the mug. I'll put it upside down to dry. And then like, I'll go get my kid up and make breakfast. Right. And like just the stupid thing of like taking the mug that has the logo. Well, I only use this mug when I'm working. And if I'm not working, I don't have the mug.
That's really quite clever. Yeah, I'm writing down, get a mug. It's a
stupid thing that just helps me like with the trend, because I'm bad at making that transition between like, okay, I'm working, I'm thinking about writing to like, okay, I'm not thinking about writing, I'm thinking about making breakfast for the kids. Do you know what I mean? Yep. So like I try as much as possible. I'm not like super great at it sometimes, but I try as much as possible to like more and more and more attach like my behavior to objects or to like places. Like I only work at certain areas in the house and I don't work at other areas. I try not to like goof off at the studio, you know what I mean? And just work when I'm at the studio. Like I tried as much as possible. There's another great book I would really recommend that I'll link to is this great book called Atomic Habits by a guy named James Clear. And if I could only recommend 2 books if I could recommend 3 books in terms of like my kind of thinking around these kind of areas of productivity and how to like deal with having a family and so on, but also still like get things done, I would recommend like Michael Hyatt, Free to Focus, James Clear, Atomic Habits, and a guy named Tim Grahl, who also actually writes about book marketing, but in his non-book marketing book, which is called Running Down a Dream. Terrible title, but an amazingly well-written book. It's a kind of a self-help productivity book with cliffhangers. Like it's brilliantly done. But like all those books have like the same sort of few things in common. But the Clear book in particular talks a lot about habit formation and like what's the science of habit formation and how do you, and basically what what he boils down to at one level is you have all these cues in your environment and it's very hard to change your habits. But one way you can do it is to change the environment, because then if you change the environment, then you don't have all the cues you built with your old environment now are not as relevant in the new environment. So if you're having a hard time, say, getting up and getting to work, like I've been having a hard time getting up and working like I used to be able to do because my basement is so messy and I'm doing it in the basement now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go home later this week. I'm going to rearrange part of the basement so it looks new and looks like a new environment, and I'll just remove all the cues I have that are distracting me. And
that's a good idea.
I'll do things like that. Like I was finding that I was spending too much time looking through my library, so I moved it out of the office. Like I'll do stuff like that. And so like it's a constant struggle because you're always coming up with like new habits, and some of them are good, some of them are not good. But what I found is like just trying to become really aware of what I'm doing and what I'm not doing, and like how do I engineer like automatic ways to do things, or like just I was having a hard time, like I say, with getting in the headspace or out of the headspace of like being worker bee. And so I just came up with like random external things of like dumb things like I got this mug and therefore I'm at work. And it sounds stupid, but like you, I have like that same sort of issue. And like I find like even if I just make what's called clear, this is called, psychologists will call this an implementation intention. So implementation intention, which is as simple as saying, Sunday I'm going to take off work, and I'll write the word off on my calendar when I'm planning my week. And it sounds dumb, and I got to remember to take the day off. So like on Sunday, I'll make like an alarm on my phone that says you're off work, like stuff like that. But just to kind of like, what I find my biggest problem, as weird as it sounds, my biggest problem is not like doing something. It's that I don't remember I'm supposed to be doing it. So like I don't remember I'm supposed to be working on this article, or I don't remember I'm supposed to be taking the day off, so I'll just start working when there's free time. But or like I don't remember I'm supposed to just relax and like watch a movie, and like that's what I wanted to do today. I forget what I wanted to do. Like it sounds like that's how out of my head I'll get sometimes. I'll forget what I hoped to do for fun.
Oh, certainly that's a sign that you are an attentive parent, because you're attending to many thoughts simultaneously. I'm not sure if that's true, but I'm going to say it is.
Well, you know what I mean, though, right? Like it's that kind of. So I don't know. I just find like I'll just try to like figure out. I'll try to like as much as possible like reassess what I'm doing and notice what I'm doing. But it can be hard to do. Definitely. We've been running long, and I appreciate you talking to me because
really I was just looking at the time. I was like, I don't remember these podcasts being this long.
No, but I'll split it up into 2 podcasts, and it'll be even better. That sounds good. So I just did like even more. I'm even more productive, Nathan, than I thought I was.
You just doubled your efforts.
But does that make sense? Well, like that's actually a really good example. Like, so I actually have, because I'm tired and it's late, I haven't been paying enough attention, and I didn't have time to really structure and plan this discussion as much as I might have otherwise. And so, but I've, just like talking to you, and it's been nice to talk to you also, because we haven't talked for a while. So like, downside of it is this thing has run a little long, but the upside is that, well, I'll just, split the recording somewhere. So now I've actually been doubly productive by being like less productive. Does that make sense?
You can also just cut out a full hour of whatever ramblings I was.
But I don't have time for that. I could do that, or I could write a book. Right?
We can take a look here, and we can say, these are my notes. This is the way we're going to summarize our conversation. I also have been enjoying it, and it's also been kind of fun to keep a list of what we've been chatting about. First of all, kill everything now. Check. I can't wait. As a way to prioritize what you think is most important in your working and personal life. You're mentioning scheduling things in clumps and finding yourself becoming more efficient because you were doing multiple podcasts, for example, in a row, and then you didn't have to do podcasts for several weeks. Or in my case, I lesson plan the same way. I'll lesson plan for the whole week, try to get that all done before the week begins, and then I can go back to that store as the week goes on.
That's really smart. Try doing it for a whole month. Like that would be my challenge to you.
That's going to be tough because unfortunately week by week is the best I can do with students, especially young students, because the demands of the class change depending on who's there.
Sure, that's true, yeah.
But I hear exactly what you're talking about. You said don't have TV. I wrote down cut down on social media, dummy. Go find a studio. I use my office at work in a similar way, but I like the idea of actually going to another separate place entirely. So go get a studio, and also get a mug. And by mug, we're talking about those sorts of. You can even say like.
I got a custom mug. It's like from Vistaprint. I put my company, because I'm a company technically speaking, so I put my company logo on it, which I don't do anything. I've got it on this mug and on a book somewhere. That's it.
So and then the mug is a symbol of a way in which you can signal when you are on or off. You can actually trick yourself into thinking that now you are working as opposed to the times in which you are not. And you gave 3 book recommendations. I wrote them down. I'm going to be looking up, especially that last one, Running Down the Dream. It sounds fantastic.
It really is. Yeah.
And that risk of sounding very much like the 12 Rules for Life. Let's just say also clean your room.
I'm so stressed out by
that was a bad joke.
Clutter in my house, but I haven't read that Laws for Life book.
Oh, you haven't? Okay,
no, I meant to, just because you and I were talking about this years ago. We were planning to read it just almost as a counterintuitive
I read it because I wanted to be able to talk to the alt-right / possible skinheads in my life, and it was not worth it.
Yeah, I investigated it, and I was like, I couldn't get past the introduction of it. I was just brutal. It was just brutal. But I wanted to read it just out of curiosity. Just like in lieu of that,
don't read the book. Hang out with women. They're chaotic, but the chaotic in the good way, like the Dungeons and Dragons way.
What's your best tip for living life with parents as a parent? Sometimes I'll just note that it can defeat you. Like I didn't put out a book for 5 years, and that's because of a bunch of drama around my kid, and the fact of having kids, and all this like family stuff. Like it's a direct, like my kind of lapse in productivity there is a direct result of just prioritizing family when it was and not getting writing done because it doesn't always work out.
You mentioned that you live in your head. I do as well. I guess this is kind of my parting shot, and I don't know if it's wise, but it's the closest I can get to it. It's at least emotionally honest. Delight in the small things, and just like really delight in them. So don't brush them off as being like funny or cute, but actually enjoy them. Earlier today, my son was around the Christmas tree. We have one of those ornaments. It's actually from the Corpse Bride. Nice. Where you press the button and then the bride and I can't remember what's his name, the guy with the floppy hair. He plays a piano song, and my son was dancing to it, and I could not stop smiling for the next 5 minutes. And I thought, this is what it's about. It's about my son dancing recklessly. He's only 2. He doesn't know he looks ridiculous, and he doesn't care. Dancing without restraint to a silly little piano ditty from a plastic Christmas tree ornament. There you go. I'm cashed out.
Nice. My funny thing with my kids lately was I wish I had been there for this, but I wasn't. But my wife was, she was like taking my daughter Claire from this, she was at an appointment. They were like leaving. They were walking down this hallway. And Claire just out of nowhere, who knows where she got this from, but out of nowhere she like points at a room they're walking past. She's like, "Is there evil in that room?" And she's like, "What?" I don't think so. I guess I don't know. Like, where she got that idea, who knows? Who knows? Is there evil in that room? I'm like,
God. Chances are.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for the time, Jonathan. I really appreciate it.
And sorry to take a lot of your time, but I also want to just encourage people to read a very special episode, which is such a great and complicated but very fun book.
You said the F word. It's supposed to be fun. I'm glad you mentioned it.
You can't. It's all about poems about Tetris that look like Tetris. You can't go wrong.